My name is Kathy Griffith, and I am so honored to have you all here. Today's event is about how we, the young of America, the old like me of America, how we can make a difference in our world. Raise your hand if anyone in your family or friends has been touched by cancer. It's the whole freaking room. So, how do we make a change in our world? We are tired of being victimized by cancer. So, my husband Greg, we're high school sweethearts. Fairy tale life, two wonderful sons, Jordan and Jamie. One day, Greg wakes up, he goes and plays basketball. He's 48 years old, and he scores 30 points here in Altoona at the Building 2. Walks in the door and he said, "Kathy, played my best basketball. Here I am, 48, and I'm still tearing it up." We go to church at 4 o'clock, and he's yellow, and I mean yellow. Whites of his eyes are yellow, skin's yellow. So I'm a dental hygienist, and I thought, you know what? It's more than likely a stone in the bile duct. I said, "Greg, go see the doctor. You're probably going to have to get your gallbladder out. No big deal." Okay, that's Saturday. By Wednesday, Blair Gastro, which Dr. McKibben is here, his group diagnosed Greg Griffith with stage 4 pancreatic and liver adenocarcinoma with 2 weeks to live. So what do you do when out of the blue your world turns yellow, is what I call it? Okay, what you do is, the first thing we did is we relied on our faith. And that is the first thing we did. And then the second thing we did was Dr. McKibben's group got us referred to Pittsburgh. We met with a group of doctors, and we decided, when the doctor said to us, "There's not much we can do," Greg Griffith said, "What can I do for you, doctor? What can I do? What can my community do for you?" So that's what we do, is when you're hit with a negative, you respond with a positive. Because when positive energy, it then grows and grows and grows, and that's what will move mountains. So fast forward, Greg passes away August 26th, and he never did say goodbye to me. He said, "Kathy, for you and I, it's never goodbye. I'm going to work this from heaven." And he said, "Keep your eyes open. You're going to see things that don't even make sense." So, May, okay, my mother gets an article out of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. 9th grader comes up with an early detection test. He wins the 2012 Science and Engineering Fair. And what Intel Science and Engineering Fair is, they take 1,500 of the world's top high school students. This young man, this was his dream since he was about 3 years old, that he wanted to attend ISEF. And so he attends in Pittsburgh last May. My mom brings me the article, and I'm like, wow, this is huge, because there is no detection test for pancreatic, ovarian, lung cancer. Typically, everybody is diagnosed end stage. So I'm like, wow. So the next morning I get an email, and it's from Jen LeConte. And Jen is a friend of Dr. Moser's and mine, and she says, "Kathy, Dr. Moser, what's your thoughts on this Jack Andraka and this test?" Dr. Moser emails back and says, "Kathy, get me more technical details." Now, I barely know how to email, let alone, work a smartphone or anything like that. So I dialed information. Crownsville, Maryland. His mother answers the phone, and we had the most wonderful discussion. I told her I'm Dr. Moser's pancreatic advocate up at Harvard Medical School, and would Jack like to meet Dr. Moser? So he came to Lakemont, the casino, last July, talked to a crowd from Blair County, 600 people in the audience. We gave him a standing ovation, because this young man, and again, what this whole event today with all of you is, you can change the world. Don't ever, because you're young, because you're whatever, don't let anything be your limitation. Go out and change the world for the good. Take all the negatives in your life and make them positive. So today, I am honored to have with us Jackie Andraka, Dr. Ralph McKibben of Blair Gastro, and Dr. Sideline Zhang from University Park. And what I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about each of them. Getting back to Jack. Okay, with Jack, Smithsonian Magazine, innovators that are rocking our world. He attended the State of the Union address with First Lady Michelle Obama. He has also been a featured speaker to a sold-out audience of Royal Society of Medicine in Cambridge. He has been on ABC, NBC, CNN, you name it. He had the phone call from Oprah Winfrey at Christmas time. He'll eventually be doing that. 60 Minutes, Forbes magazine. I mean, I could go on for an hour. Plus, he does all these TED Talks. Have you heard about the TED Talks? He does, that's really a cool thing. So he's, does a lot of the TED Talks, which are positive, uplifting stories. Just got an award that I watched on TV, the show The Doctors. I mean, I could go on, and the cool thing about Jack, he's just Jack. He's a very humble, normal 10th grader that just wants to make a difference in the world. He had to witness a close family friend die of pancreatic cancer. And then, like Greg and I, when we realized there's nothing that can be done, he immediately decided to take the negative, make it a positive. He knocked on 200 doors at Johns Hopkins asking if he could use a lab. And only one doctor, Dr. Mietra, let him in. So 200 knocks on a door, one let him in, and Jack came up with the early detection test through a wide variety of different things. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. And he has patented that. And, hopefully the goal is to get it out. Typically, our FDA process is long and arduous in the United States, 8 to 10 years. Our hope and our prayer is that it can be expedited sooner than later, because 50,000 lives we lose to pancreatic every single year. So that's a random terroristic attack. Anyone in this room could get hit with pancreatic cancer. It's that random. And that's why we're out here raising the awareness of all this. So also we have Dr. Ralph McKibben of, whoops, that's my magazine, I'm sorry, of Blair Gastro. Did I mess that up, Jack? Go ahead, you work on that. My paper hit that. Let me get all my stuff. So Dr. McKibben of Blair Gastro, he is the state representative for the Digestive Disease National Coalition, and he is also our representative with Altoona Hospital. And so he brings a lot of information to you today. And Dr. Sideline Zhang, he is the top cancer researcher, Penn State University, University Park. His group, his research project just was awarded $720,000 by the American Cancer Society, and we are honored to have all three. Can we give them a round of applause? Okay, we're going to begin. I'm going to start out with Dr. McKibben.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Can you hear me? Am I close enough? There's no feedback here. I just want to give you some background information on pancreatic cancer and then talk to you about the philosophy of what's going on here today. You saw something about a landmark grouping, coalition type thing, just so you can understand what it is that we're trying to do. Pancreatic cancer, well, let's just back up. In 1990, when that Richard Nixon guy was president, he gave a State of the Union address and created the war on cancer. He devoted $100 million to the effort and said, we've got to do with cancer what we did with going to the moon. we created clinical trials at that time. We created a European consortium to work on cancer research, and started defining quality measures and things that would allow us to keep data. Started coming together with how we're recording data and keeping track of what we do. By the year 2005, every year since then, the cancer rates have gone down in the United States. And you see this in the news. Cancer rates are going down, cancer rates are going down, and everybody is really proud and happy. Unfortunately, that isn't true for all cancers. Everybody hears about colorectal cancer, breast cancer with the Susan Komen thing. Pancreatic cancer is actually on the rise. It is the 4th leading cause of cancer death in both men and women, and in about 10 years, it will surpass colorectal cancer and make it number 3. So this is your future we're talking about. What is the thing that you have to worry about when you get older? You know, lung cancer should go down, breast cancer should go down, but we're looking at pancreatic cancer in the future, and we're not sure what's going on. Why don't the same tools and things that work for the other cancers work for pancreas cancer? Well, one of the reasons is, and if you know anything about biology, the pancreas sits behind the stomach, on top of the spine, and it's sort of in the middle of everything. And so by the time you come in with symptoms, it's too late. Skin cancers and colon cancers start on the surface and actually have to get down into the circulation before they can spread. Cancers inside solid organs like the breast and the pancreas and the liver are already in the circulation and have the ability to spread very quickly. So when it does present, it's really very late. So the U.S. Preventative Healthcare Task Force makes no recommendations for screening for regular risk people because there aren't any screening tests. For people with other risk factors like a family history of hereditary pancreatic cancer, people with chronic inflammation diseases and other risk factors, there are some things that we can do. With the high imaging capabilities that we have these days, MRIs, ultrasounds, and whatnot, we're finding a lot of spots in the liver. We're looking and we're finding these precancerous tumors and other cysts, and we're sort of collecting groups of people we don't know what to do with because we don't have any screening tests. So Blair Gastroenterology covers an area of about 500,000 people here. Our practice really sort of like covers all of Rhode Island or all of Delaware or all of Wyoming and half of Montana. That's the size of the population that we serve. And we have created a pancreatic clinic for following these people. We're going to be putting coordinators in place, and we're trying to come up with criteria for how we can help these people. The researchers that you're going to meet today are primarily working on the other end of the spectrum, the cancer end, and we'd like to get something in the middle to see what we can do. Jack has come up with an idea for a test that hopefully if you have cancer, we find it early, but we don't know who to give the test to. So we're going to have to keep groups of people and figure out how to do this. One of the things that Kathy talked about was the need for change. Back in the old days, a researcher such as Dr. Zhang would write a paper and publish it. Someone would notice it. The next year, someone would do follow-up research. It would get presented at a meeting. The scientists would take that information back to their universities, and over the course of years, this information would disseminate out into society. And that is too slow. The Centers for Disease Control, the National Cancer Institute, through an organization and a grouping called Cancer Control Planet, have put together a framework for change, a framework for developing change in the modern world for preventing cancer. It originally came out with the World Health Organization for helping third world countries, if you will, people with less resources on how they can make change. And in implementing these changes over the years and looking around at the things that are changing in your life so quickly, we're able to use this model. So simply put, researchers with ideas, such as these gentlemen here, and disseminating organizations, people with an interest in spreading the word, such as the Griffith Family Foundation, the Association of Families Fighting Pancreatic Cancer, combine together and develop similar interest. They want their ideas out there. They want them to spread. The organizations want them to spread. On the other hand are the user groups, the groups that actually are going to use this information. Patients, people at interest, people who had family members die who want to help in their community, practicing physicians who were trying to save lives, people who were trying to treat people who were already diagnosed. These are examples of the users. Well, you're all familiar with Facebook, right? 6 degrees of separation between any two people on the planet. By using a social networking model, by allowing you as users to be here today, to meet the researchers and get this, you can all go out and Facebook and text and LinkedIn and all the things that you do and spread awareness much more quickly. So it's possible to cut it in by 75% to a 1-year stage, what used to take 4 or 5 years. The amount of medical knowledge as it is doubles every 4 years. And the old model of going to the meetings and hanging out and bringing it back and discussing it at the monthly meeting doesn't work because time moves too quickly. And you're all familiar with this in your daily lives. I mean, things that used to be interesting aren't because you get the information right away. It's there for you. And so by grouping in with these organizations that are disseminating information, we can make a quick change. So as an example here, by joining as a user and a disseminator, I'm actually a representative to the State Leadership Cabinet, the Pennsylvania Society of Gastroenterology, the National Digestive Disease Coalition, and then working through the Sheets Center for Entrepreneurial Excellence here. This is an entrepreneurial model. If you know anything about entrepreneurship and change, there's financial entrepreneurship, meaning how do I make a buck? There's social entrepreneurship, a whole separate field. How do I grow a nonprofit organization? How do I affect change for the benefit of all? Because entrepreneurship is based on change and benefit. So that fits in with the philosophy of what's going here. So all of these interested parties, the hospitals, the university, et cetera, have come together today to provide this opportunity. And so we hope that with some of the other things that are coming up, maybe the Sideline cancer in your organizations, in your high schools, et cetera, you'll be able to participate, be part of a growth phenomenon, and see it from the ground up, so to speak. So, I think I'll leave it at that, and who's next?
I'll come up and introduce Jack, yep.
Okay, buy Bitcoins,
I'll
right?
introduce you, and we'll... How I want to introduce Jack is I want to talk about what we did at Hollidaysburg. We did an event called Tackle Cancer, and Bonnie Waltz and Allie Stubbs and Melissa Stubbs and Kelly Baker, group of moms and a group of students called me to go to Chili's for lunch the day after I got back from the beach. Kathy, meet us at Chili's, we got an idea. They decided that we could do a purple and pink out night at Tiger Stadium and sell t-shirts to all the junior high, elementary, high school. We sold, what was it, Bonnie, 1,200? We sold 1,200 t-shirts, purple and pink. Half the proceeds went to the Griffith Family Foundation and half the proceeds went to the American Cancer Society. So what the paper I gave to you today is, Caitlin Farnan and I plan to meet with your principal. I want to run this by your principal first to see if he'd be interested in partaking in this type of an event. You could create it any way you would like. And for instance, say you raise $100, you would give $50 to the Griffith Family Foundation, which filters right into the AFFPC, and then another $50 to a cancer charity of your choice. So what I want you to do is just think about what you might want to do creatively in your high school. Jack would be our celebrity face of this, and you know, we are going to do it with all 11 high schools this fall. However, the proper thing for me to do would be to meet with your principal to make sure he would be interested in being, you know, a participant in this. So today, you know, we don't want you just to come in here for the same old song and dance. You came in not really sure why you come in. You actually, now we're providing you the wheels, as Kelly Baker says. We are providing you the wheels to make a change in your high school against cancer. However you want to do that, the new name is going to be Sideline Cancer, so it doesn't have to be related just to sports. Whether you're a band member, orchestra, scholastic quiz, whatever it would be, Sideline Cancer will be, you know, the name we will use, and then, you know, you can do t-shirts, that kind of thing, but you'll have complete autonomy. And so today you can see the method to our madness is having Jack here today in the entrepreneurial building, having Penn State and all the 3 hospitals host this event. This is literally providing you a way, like Jack did, making a change in our world. So it is my great honor here today to introduce an entrepreneur, an innovator, a young cancer researcher, and a sophomore from Crownsville, Maryland, Jack Andraka. Here you go, my dear.
Have you ever experienced a moment in your life that was so painful and confusing that all you wanted to do was learn as much as you could to make sense of it all? Oh, shoot, wrong slide. When I was 13, a close family friend who was like an uncle to me passed from pancreatic cancer. When the disease hit so close to home, I knew I needed to learn more, so I went online to find answers. And using the internet, I found statistics on pancreatic cancer, and what I had found really shocked me. Over 85% of all pancreatic cancers are diagnosed late, when someone has less than a 2% chance of survival. Why are we so bad at detecting pancreatic cancer? What I found is our current modern medicine is a 60-year-old technique, which is older than my dad. But in addition, it costs $800 per test, and it's grossly inaccurate, missing 30% of all pancreatic cancers. Your doctor would have to be ridiculously suspicious that you have the cancer in order to give you this test. Learning this, I was sure there had to be a better way. So essentially, I went and set up a scientific criteria as to what a sensor would have to look like to effectively diagnose pancreatic cancer. The sensor would have to be simple or inexpensive, rapid, simple, sensitive, selective, and minimally invasive. And I was pretty sure I could do this, but I wasn't exactly quite sure how, like the technical details. And then what I realized is the reason our current tests haven't been updated in over 6 decades is because essentially what you're looking for when you're diagnosing pancreatic cancer is a protein in your bloodstream. And this sounds very straightforward, but it's anything but, because you have these liters and liters of blood already abundant in protein, and you're looking for this tiny amount of this tiny protein in your bloodstream, and that's next to impossible. It's like trying to find a needle in a stack of nearly identical needles. So, however, undeterred, I went to any teenager's best friend for information, Google and Wikipedia, how I get through every school assignment. And I found a database of over 8,000 different proteins that are found in your bloodstream when you have pancreatic, ovarian, and lung cancer. And essentially, I began just going through this, and on the 4,000th try, when I was close to losing my sanity, I found one. And its name is called mesothelin. And it's just your ordinary run-of-the-mill type protein, unless you have pancreatic, ovarian, and lung cancer, in which case it's found at these very high levels in your bloodstream. But the key is that it's found in the earliest stages of the disease, when you have close to a 100% chance of survival. And so if we could potentially detect this protein, we could lift the once dismal pancreatic cancer survival rates from 5.5% to maybe 100%. And so now that I had found a reliable protein, I of course had to find a way to detect it, as that was the big question we're facing. And my innovation actually came in the most unlikely places. High school biology class, absolute stifler of innovation. And essentially what happened is I had snuck in an article on something called carbon nanotubes, these long, thin pipes of carbon that are an atom thick and 1/50,000th the diameter of your hair. And despite their extremely small size, they have these incredible properties. They're kind of like the superheroes of material science. For example, they're stronger than steel and conduct electricity better than copper. They're absolutely fascinating, at least to me. But, and we were learning about these things called antibodies, essentially molecules that only react with one specific protein, in this case, the cancer biomarker. So I was just saying in biology class when suddenly it hit me. What I was reading about carbon nanotubes and what we were supposed to be learning about antibodies could be combined. Essentially, you weave these antibodies into a network of carbon nanotubes, such that you have a network that only reacts with one specific protein. But in addition, what happens is the network will change its electrical properties based on the amount of that protein present, and thus I could detect this change in electricity using a $50 ohm meter I snagged from my dad with some sewing needles. But there's one catch with this. that these networks of nanotubes are very flimsy, so they need to be supported. And so in order to do this, I use paper. And making a paper sensor making a paper sensor for pancreatic cancer is about as simple as making chocolate chip cookies. Essentially, you start with some water, you pour in some antibodies, pour in some nanotubes, mix it up, then you take some paper, dip it, dry it, and you can detect cancer. So now that I had an idea, I suddenly realized I needed a lab because I can't really do cancer research on my kitchen countertop. So I emailed 200 different professors at Johns Hopkins University and the National Institutes of Health, trying to get into their lab, really. And I emailed them a budget, a procedure, a date, some preliminary data I'd collected. And essentially, I got 199 rejections out of those 200. And finally, one professor said, maybe I might be able to take you. Come in and I'll do an interview. So I come in armed with these giant blue binders full of papers, 500 plus papers. And essentially I go in and the interview starts, and as soon as I start talking, he calls in a PhD from the lab, and then he calls in another and another. And they keep asking these really specific questions, trying to sync my procedure. But I answered all of their questions. I guessed on quite a few, and I actually guessed C on all of them, just like I did on my SAT. But I finally got into the lab, and essentially I started working, and as soon as I started, I realized that my once brilliant procedure had something like 1 million holes in it. So over the course of 7 long months in that lab, I filled each and every one of those holes, and at the end, I ended up with one small paper sensor that costs 3 cents and takes 5 minutes to run. This makes it 168 times faster, over 26,000 times less expensive, and over 400 times more sensitive than our current standards for pancreatic cancer detection. So in the next 2 to 5 years, this patent-pending sensor could potentially lift the survival rates from once dismal 5.5% to close to 100%, because there's 100% accuracy and detects the cancer when you have close to 100% chance of survival. And it wouldn't stop there. You could use it for ovarian and lung cancer as well. And then also, by switching out that antibody, which isn't really hard at all, you can detect a different protein, thus a different disease. So potentially you could detect any disease in the world, ranging from Alzheimer's to heart disease, other forms of cancer, even HIV/AIDS. And so for me, throughout let me see what, oh shoot, whoops, the hiding thing didn't work, but anyway. So through this, I've learned a very important lesson, that through the internet, anything is possible. Theories can be shared, and you don't have to be a professor with multiple degrees to have your ideas valued. And regardless of your age, your gender, your ethnicity, anything, it's just your ideas that count on the internet. And so instead of taking pictures of your food and posting them on Instagram or making duck-faced pictures on Facebook, you could be changing the world. So if a 15-year-old who didn't quite know what a pancreas was could find a new way to detect pancreatic cancer, just imagine what you could do. Thank you.
So when you leave here today, is there anything that can hold any of us back, any of you back from changing our world? I don't think so. Don't ever put yourself in a box, ever. Think, do, you know, when you believe, we can achieve. And that's kind of our mantra with the Alliance of Families Fighting Pancreatic Cancer. If we believe it, we can achieve it, and no mountain's too big. There's a young lady in this room. In fact, there's 2 young ladies. Kiara Sheardon. Kiara, would you like to come up a minute to say hello to everybody? Come on, Kiara. Come on. Kiara is one of my best friends, and Kiara has been changing the world like Jack. In fact, she shared the stage at the casino with Jack in January, or not January, it was July. And Kiara is a cancer survivor. She was diagnosed about a week before Greg with what's called epithelioid sarcoma. And how many people worldwide have your cancer?
I think 100.
100 people worldwide have Kiara's cancer. And she also, instead of being a victim, she has been out changing the world. I can't keep up with her. She travels internationally. She's been to Bosnia, Medjugorje twice. she's in the orchestra, she does dance, she's a crossing guard. Did you ever let your cancer ever hold you back? No. And what would you say to these kids about, changing the world? What would you say? Never give up.
Never give up and always just believe.
Positive and believe. And no mountain's too big. How about that? And so, Kiera, let's give Kiera a round of applause. She is the official ambassador for the Griffith Family Foundation and the Alliance of Families Fighting Pancreatic Cancer. She's our ambassador, our goodwill ambassador. Where our group goes, Kiera goes. So I'm so proud of her. Thank you, Kiera. Then there's another young lady, my dear good friend, Caitlin Farnan. Caitlin is also a cancer survivor. And Caitlin is who put together this entire event. I am not capable of technological skills, your printouts, all your emails. It's Caitlin that has done everything to make this event happen. She is also a cancer survivor, and I swear I get emails from her in the middle of the night with ideas. I got one last night about her ideas and vision for the Sideline cancer. She came up with that entire idea. In fact, everything about April 5th, if it wasn't for Caitlin, we all would not be here because I'm not capable of any of this stuff. I'm like a human connector, but I can't technology-wise connect. And so Caitlin, why don't you talk to the audience?
So, I was diagnosed with cancer when I was just a little bit younger than you. I was a freshman in high school, and it's really fun to see Mr. Emler here from Hollidaysburg because I had him about the year after that. So I graduated from Hollidaysburg, went to Penn State, and then now I'm back at Penn State teaching economics and working with Kathy. But I had a better chance the day I was diagnosed of winning the lottery. Still kind of kicked myself in the butt that I didn't try because apparently the odds were in my favor. But I think the biggest thing you can do, no matter whether it's a small thing that's happening in your life, maybe you broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe you just didn't get an A on that test you wanted, it doesn't have to be as big as what Kara and I are going through or the Griffith family. It can just be something small. No matter what you're feeling that day, if you go out and at least do something. I know Mr. Griffith used to always talk about just put your pants on that day. Whether putting your pants on that day is studying for the next exam that after one you just failed, or going out and saying hello to someone new if you had a bad relationship end. No matter what you do, no matter what happens to you, there's always something more you can do in the world. So live your dreams, dream bigger than you ever thought possible, because you'd be amazed at what happens.
Look here. So what we're going to do, we wanted to give you all some time, and again, I would like to have, we'll have Dr. Zhang say a few words too and talk about what he does at University Park. And once he shares a couple minutes of what he does, then we're going to open this up to your questions for Jack, Dr. McKibben, and Dr. Zhang. For Kiera, for Caitlin, for myself, whatever questions you may have, we're going to open this up. So I would like to take this time now to introduce Dr. Ziyan Zhang of University Park. He is a young cancer researcher that is also rocking the world here at University Park. So let's give him a round of applause. There we go.
Thank you for the...
You're welcome. I'm going to grab my phone. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. It's my honor to be here. So I am an assistant professor at Penn State Bioengineering. So what we do, we are developing micro and nanotechnology for biomedical applications. Okay. So one big thrust in my lab is trying to make technologies to detect circulating tumor cells from a tube of blood samples of a cancer patient. So it's different from what the technology developed by Jack, which is trying to detect basically proteins or biomarkers in the blood plasma, we are really looking for tumor cells. Okay, so what happened is when tumor started to metastasis, the metastasis route is through either the blood or the lymphatic circulation. Okay, actually, people found the majority of those metastases occurred through the blood circulation. So individual tumor cells or clusters of those tumor cells will detach from the original tumor. And then through a complicated process called metastasis, and travel through the bloodstream and colonize the distant tissue or organ. Okay. So for us, we think there's a golden opportunity that's pretty much happening for all the metastasis patients, is we might be able to detect those very rare circulating tumor cells in the blood. Okay. But unfortunately, those tumor cells are very rare. Okay, on the order of 1 tumor cell per billion of blood cells. So we are, again, really trying to look for a needle in a haystack. Okay. So far there are different technologies people thought about trying to pull those cells out and trying to detect those cells. So we develop a technology based on physical enrichment, so the size and the deformability, how flexible these cells. So what we do is we basically, you can think we make a filter. So it's, a simple thing is you just make pores on the surface. Okay, of course the pore needs to be relatively small. In our case, is between say 5 to 8 micrometers. Okay, so we do have to use microfabrication to achieve such kind of devices. And then, what we developed in my lab in the past 3 years is we invented a new type of this kind of devices. So the size of this device is only 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And we can actually filter through 1 whole tube of blood through this device within 1 to 2 minutes. So it's a pretty fast system. And then we need to do detection on this device to basically tell, okay, this is tumor cells, it's not a blood cell. Because it's very difficult to actually get pure tumor cells on this device. So there are still hundreds or thousands of blood cells on this device. So we still need to do some type of a detection to do that. Okay. So the hope is this kind of blood sample is, we always said that's a minimal invasive technique, because basically it's very easy to get a tube of blood. Okay, and then if we can detect the tumor cells, and also the other very important use of this such technology will be monitor the treatment efficacy of the patients. So we can actually, for example, get a tube of blood from the patient every couple of weeks, and we can monitor if the patient have a good response to certain chemotherapy drugs. Okay, so that's, I guess, what we do in my lab. I'm very excited to see a whole room of a lot of those young people here, because I do think you guys are the hope. As long as I guess Jack is a very good example. For myself, actually, it's kind of different from Jack, because I actually studied a lot of different disciplines before I really starting to do cancer research. So I was studying biology in my college, and then I studied electrical engineering for my master's and my PhDs. So I guess I spent a lot of time, really study those instead of really attacking some real-world problem. But I'm happy, in the end, I'm doing this. So I guess it's kind of, I see Jack started that very much, much earlier than what I did. Okay. Okay, I will stop here, and I would like to answer any of the questions you guys have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, a friend of mine, her dad died of pancreatic cancer, and she brought to my house 1,000 Cancer Warrior t-shirts and sweatshirts. I mean, How about it, Caitlin, Jordan, and Jamie? We have t-shirts galore up in my attic. So, ironically, our theme with the Griffith Family Foundation is cancer warriors. That, you know, even though we're pancreatic, so many of our friends are hit by ovarian, brain cancer. So today, what we're going to do is if you ask a question, you're going to take home a nice t-shirt or sweatshirt. So I'd like to start out. How does anyone have any questions? And feel free, I mean, this is a very easy group. Feel free, and we'll do a question and answer here. Any questions?
Got one over here.
Okay, one over here. Go ahead. I would give you, just go ahead. You can, okay, go ahead. There you go. Okay.
For Jack, I'm curious, who did you take your idea to once you thought you had come up with a detector? Like, what process did you have to go through once you thought you had made one?
Well, actually, the first person who I told, I didn't plan on telling them, was my high school biology teacher, because as soon as I actually thought of the idea, it seems like she has like eyes on the back of her head. She suddenly saw me and stormed up to my desk and stole my paper. And then from there, I had to beg her for it back. So she told me it was a crazy idea. And then my parents said no. And then 199 professors said no. But one professor said yes. And one thing that you have to remember is that every great revolution, every great movement, and every great idea always starts out as some wild, insane idea that no one believes in except for the person who thought of it. So I really just kept going until someone told me yes. I guess I was a bit stubborn there.
Excellent.
Just a quick comment. Alexander Fleming, one of the discoverers of penicillin, in his Nobel lecture, told the story that when he was in the beginning of his education, they were doing the agar plates growing bacteria, and he noticed spots on his, and he went up to the teacher and said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Oh, you have mold on there. It's killing the bacteria. You'll have to start over again." And he spent the rest of his career discovering the fact that bread mold kills bacteria. So just because you see something and you observe it doesn't mean it's not noteworthy, and you really must question every assumption that you have.
Some more questions?
Hi, just out of curiosity, what were the reactions to the 199 professors that actually rejected you?
So actually, they were awfully mean, a lot of them. One of them went through it seems they spent quite a lot of time on their responses, playing how to perfectly make fun of my idea. They went through my entire procedure line by line, saying why each and every step was the worst mistake I could make. Some said, "Oh, this is a crazy idea. I don't feel like reading your email." Others said, "I just don't have the funding for you." Others said, "My lab's too full. I don't have the equipment." So a lot of them were just very negative. And so not all professors are like that. My professor that I finally settled down with was insanely nice, and he is the best professor ever. And now he's moving down to MD Anderson in Texas to head up a $1 billion cancer institute.
Yeah, that's a huge story in its own right. This Dr. Mietra of Johns Hopkins has now been hired to oversee a $1 billion pancreatic endeavor at MD Anderson in Texas. So that's huge. So, this is all on the forefront. All of this is, cancer, if people have finally, I think, have had it. We've all been annihilated by it. And with Dr. Mietra now being promoted down to MD Anderson to do this $1 billion pancreatic cancer endeavor, we're on our way. And so, Jack, why don't you share with them too, you're in sophomore and you've been traveling international, tell them what you see in your future.
Yeah, I just actually came back from Holland yesterday, I believe. So customs lines are horrible. I never liked them. But so next what I'm working on is this thing called the Tricorder X Prize, which essentially is a $10 million prize to develop something the size of a smartphone that you pass over your skin and it diagnoses any disease instantly. So essentially I've gathered a team of all-star high school researchers from around the world that I met through science fair to work on this, and we're going up against 300 teams of all adults and large corporations. So very exciting, and we're going up to MIT to work this summer. So very, very exciting. And so actually I didn't come from medicine. I actually used to do environmental stuff. So I really kind of took a turn into medicine. So really you can go into anything.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, you really, the twists and turns of life, just be open. That's the whole key, is what I love about Jack, is that he's open for change, and he's open to the twists and the turns, to making the world a better place. Can you tell them also, well, hey, yeah.
I think we got a few.
Yep, go ahead. Do you need a mic, Melissa? Caitlin, have it? Okay, very good. They're probably going to ask you.
I was wondering what your viewpoints were on brominated vegetable oil, yellow 5 and 6 high fructose corn syrup, and other artificial sweeteners.
How about these two?
I'm pretty much against the whole ball of wax, particularly the high fructose corn syrup. That's a political statement, though, but I'm old enough to recall when Coca-Cola was changed to the new Coke, and everybody thought they were pretty funny because it tasted bad, and they changed it to Coke Classic. What they forgot to tell us was that's when they changed it to high fructose corn syrup. If you put rats in a cage and feed them sucrose, which is glucose disaccharide, they will not gain weight. If you put high fructose corn syrup, which is glucose fructose disaccharide, they will gain 50% body weight, so they'll overeat. So presumably the idea is that all the high fructose corn syrup is generating excess eating and contributing to the overweight phenomenon. I don't know the exact details, but that's enough to make me suspicious.
Personally, I love my Cocoa Puffs with the high fructose corn syrup.
So do I.
I have a question for Jack. Being that I'm very involved in chemistry, what kind of indicators did you use in order to tell what cancer it was, or if you had this cancer?
So what's really, oh wow, that's loud. Okay. So what's really cool about the mesothelin protein is that it's specific for pancreatic, ovarian, and lung cancer. It's not found in other diseases such as chronic pancreatitis and inflammation of your pancreas. That's the disease that's most often mistaken for pancreatic cancer. And in this case, the biomarker is very specific, meaning it's not found in other diseases. And so, yeah, that's essential. And I was doing a bit of electrochem here because of the nanotubes. So, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Okay, the reaction. So essentially what happens is you have the antibody, and it's in this network of carbon nanotubes. And the antibody is kind of like a locking key, it only reacts with that one protein. And so when you put a blood drop onto my sensor, essentially, if you have this mesothelin protein in your bloodstream, it will actually go into this network such that it will kind of smash into the antibody and form this large molecule. And when that happens, it pushes these nanotubes apart because the molecule is kind of growing. And when that happens, there are less connections along those nanotubes. And what that means is that it's harder to put electrical current through this. And so then I can just measure that with my $50 ohm meter.
My uncle passed away from pancreatic cancer when I was in 7th grade, but he didn't have any risk factors, any known risk factors, so I was so hard to diagnose him. So as far as your test, are you hoping it becomes something to use in a routine screening, your every year physical, or are you looking more toward the risk factor group? What do you see for the future of your test?
So that's actually a very important. Oh yes, do I need a microphone? Okay. So yeah, so essentially in order to have early diagnostics, you need to have early detection. And the vast majority, 90% of all pancreatic cancers are diagnosed in people that have no risk factors, no family history of pancreatic cancer. So this would really be on your local Walgreens shelf, for example, or for example, in your local doctor's appointment when you have one of those. And so Also, you would kind of have an entire suite of these sensors. And so, for example, you could take a survey as to whether or not you're having symptoms, and from there, you could use an algorithm and essentially make a decision as to what sensors I want to test you with, and potentially detect these cancers early.
This young man in the gray is very patient.
I was just wondering, like, how has your daily life changed since you had the breakthrough?
He's a rock star.
I don't have to wake up at 5:50 in the morning anymore for school. Usually I'm out about around the world, so.
You are.
Fun, fun, fun.
He was open to his new world.
Hello, my name is Taylor Payne. I was wondering if we keep advancing in our technology, if chemotherapy will become irrelevant. That's for all three of you.
I will share the mic.
Well, that's chemotherapy conceptually is poison. Cancer cells are made up of your cells, and the only way you kill them with chemicals is to poison you, and there's a lot of innocent bystander reaction. Kills rapidly dividing cells, and that also includes your intestinal lining, your hair, and your bone marrow. So people's hair fall out, they throw up, they get sick, they can't fight infection, etc. And then, of course, you could use radiation or other treatment methods that kill rapidly dividing cells. Obviously, the idea is to never have to go there. So in colorectal cancer, the idea is to get your inside skin exam, take off the little polyps and go home, which is equivalent to going to the skin doctor and taking off the little bumps before they're cancer. So absolutely, as a practitioner, chemo should become irrelevant. It won't absolutely, because there will always be someone who won't go and shows up late. But antibodies are also providing technology for perhaps targeted therapy. With the high resolution scanning, we can actually deliver the chemicals directly to the tumor and things like that. So there's a lot less of the innocent bystander in the future, hopefully, as well.
I think that's an excellent question. I think part of the challenge to treat cancer is not really a single disease. It's over 200 types of diseases. So what we talk about, for example, breast cancer, prostate cancer, even within these cancers, the fundamental mechanism is actually quite different. So I'm a believer of so-called personalized treatment. So I believe we really need to treat each cases individually, and we need to have the technology really to tell what is wrong at the molecular level of the particular patients. If we can do that, that will give us two advantages. One advantage is, right now when we talk about chemotherapy, I mean, Dr. Ralph can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the cases, those chemotherapy reagents are not really targeted for specific target or molecules or cells. So that's the reason it's actually killing a lot of other benign cells or good cells, normal cells. So if we can really know what's the problem for this particular patient, for example, which pathways that goes wrong, then we can probably figure out a way to correct the problem for this particular patients. The other thing is I think we need to improve on the drug delivery part. So right now the chemotherapy is basically we just putting the drugs into the bloodstream, and as it circulates, it pretty much goes everywhere in the body, right? So we need to make a better job, so either do local delivery or somehow targeted delivery. So those drugs only affect those tumor tissues, hopefully can protect the normal tissues and cells.
So I'll tell you about 3 interesting things that I've seen by high schoolers. So 2 years ago, the Gordon E. Moore Award actually went to a young girl by the name of Amy Chiao from Texas. And essentially her innovation was she took things called titanium dioxide nanotubes. So instead of carbon, they're made out of titanium. And then she made it such that she attached an antibody, and it would go into your bloodstream and would hook onto these cancer cells. And then she could essentially shoot with a laser pointer and produce the toxic right onto the cancer. But also, the toxic was what we call oxidative species. And there are the certain oxidative species that wouldn't kill regular cells, only the cancer cells, such that it was targeted therapy in several different ways. And that one was actually very, very interesting. She, I believe, won $75,000 along with being at the State of the Union as well. And another point of research is by Amy Zhang, I believe her name was. She won the Siemens Westinghouse for $100,000, and she made something where essentially it was a thing called theranostics, where you have therapy and diagnostics coupled into one thing. So she made it such that you could send this molecule with an antibody, hit the cancer cell, then you would heat it by shooting the laser at it, but also you would heat this gold nanoshell that would release the toxin, and you could send it through an MRI and see where the cancer is. So it was kind of a triple approach. And right now, I'm working on the Tricorder X Prize, and what I'm working on is something called a Raman spectrometer. And that sounds like a very fancy name, but it's really pretty simple. You take some light, shoot it at a molecule, and based on how that light interacts with it, you can tell exactly the chemical composition of that molecule. So typically, these can be used for like medical diagnostics, explosive detection, and environmental monitoring. The problem, however, is that they're very large, like $100,000, and are the size of a small car. And so they're not really used. And so what I'm doing is developing into something the size of like a sugar cube almost, such that you would be able to look through your skin into your bloodstream and look at every single protein, and from there diagnose any disease. But in addition, you could use algorithms and then determine from those proteins, you could determine exact chemotherapy or really any therapy for the person and what best course of action to do.
It's amazing stuff. We have 2 more questions to go, so who's next, Melissa? Go right ahead.
Hi, my question is for Jack, and I wanted to know, like, how many times did you have to like really test your like hypothesis, and who did you use as your guinea pig?
Okay, so essentially my hypothesis. So there are 2 types of people in the world, the people that like repeating experiments and the people that don't. Well, someone actually nailed that experiment and said there are 2 types of people in the world, those that divide people into 2 types of people and those that don't. But so essentially what happened is I repeated it the typical 5 times, and my professor was like, oh, just do it 50 more times. And I unfortunately said no to that. So that's why there is no scientific paper on my research currently, much to his despair. But anyway, essentially it's still being worked on. And for my guinea pig, Johns Hopkins provided cancer samples, so essentially blood samples from patients who had pancreatic cancer, even in the earliest stages. And I was surprised they gave those to like a 15-year-old, as I could like drop them and like they'd shatter and I'd waste like all of this research money. But yeah, so that's essentially what I did. But yeah, and yeah.
And just yeah. Melissa, who's next? This is our last question.
My question is for all 3 of you. I've had a lot of cancer run in my family and over the last couple of years, and I was wondering how long the effects of radiation and chemotherapy last after they have been in remission. Or been put in remission.
That's an excellent question. How long do the effects of chemotherapy and radiation last? Forever. Or at least until you die. And what do I mean by that? Radiation, as we know from the studies from Nagasaki and Hiroshima, is a lifelong phenomenon. When you become irradiated, you accumulate damage, and so your total radiation exposure over your lifetime does matter. As a word of caution to all you young people, CAT scans. A CAT scan is the equivalent of 1,200 to 1,500 chest x-rays. The risk of cancer in middle age is about 1 per 1,000 per CAT scan. The risk of lifetime cancer at the age of 20 is about 1 in 120. And all you young women, as you know, you have your eggs from when you were a fetus, so you just irradiated your children as well. So you need to be very careful with radiation exposure. Now, radiation therapy is not nearly as harmful as it used to be. It used to be to sort of they put you in the room with something radioactive like in an old sci-fi movie, you know, and that was bad. Now with the 3D acquisition studies, you can pinpoint the tumor down to very small sizes and triangulate different beams to focus on one point. So there's a lot less collateral damage. The idea is not to get any damage around the area, but you'd never get zero. Chemotherapy is poison. Like I said, the good news is you survived your cancer or extended your life. The bad news is there's residual effects. So to go back to the question over here, we'd like to get rid of it. We very much like to get rid of it. And so that's all about prevention. So what are the risks of chemo? Additional cancers when you get further down the line, other diseases cropping up, etc. The risks are not huge. It could be measured in a few percent. And so if you're looking at a 100% chance of death versus a few percent chance of getting something else years down the road, most people pick option 2. Most people go on to have pretty normal lives. So I hope that answers your question.
I think I'm pretty normal. Do you want to
That's right.
do you want to use just some closing comments?
Yes, I'll go ahead. There are 2 other ladies that I want to thank, Donna Bond and the Sheets Entrepreneurial Center here for hosting us today. Let's give them a round of applause. And most importantly, Mrs. Jane Andraka for taking such good care of her son Jack. Let's give her a round of applause. So as you see here, today we all used our gifts and talents to make the world a better place. So your job today is to go home and think about what you'd like to do in your high school with the Sideline Cancer. Can be anything you want. Caitlin and I will meet personally with your principals in the future to get their official okay, and think about how you can rock the